Your boss just made a decision you know is wrong. You need to push back. But how do you disagree without ending your career? Daily English Lab, the podcast where real conversations help you speak real English. Hey, English learners and professionals. Welcome back to Daily English Lab. I'm Lily.
And I'm Henry. And today, we're going somewhere that makes most people genuinely uncomfortable, even native English speakers.
We're talking about disagreeing with your boss. In English, professionally, without destroying the relationship, without sounding aggressive, and without being dismissed.
Because here's the reality. In English-speaking professional culture, the way you disagree matters as much as what you disagree about.
Say it wrong, and you sound unprofessional, aggressive, or simply unaware of how professional hierarchy works.
Say it right, with the right linguistic tools, the right framing, the right vocabulary, and you become the person in the room whose perspective is respected and sought out.
Today, we're giving you every tool you need. The psychology, the framework, the advanced vocabulary, and real roleplay. Bad version versus professional version.
By the end of this episode, you will never say, "I disagree" in a professional context again. Not because you stop disagreeing, because you have far more powerful ways to do it.
Let's build that skill. Henry, before we get into phrases and vocabulary, let's talk about why disagreeing with a boss is so uniquely difficult in English professional culture.
It comes down to three things that are all happening simultaneously when you push back against someone senior: status, relationship, and the content of the disagreement itself.
3 layers at once.
And most people only think about one: the content. They focus on being right, on having the correct information or the better idea.
But in the room, the other 2 layers are being processed just as powerfully.
Status? Your boss has authority. When you disagree bluntly, you create an implicit challenge to that authority, even if you don't intend to. The brain of the person with more status registers the challenge before the content of your argument even lands.
Which is why brilliant people with correct information get shut down in meetings, while less correct people with better delivery get heard.
It is genuinely unfair, and it is genuinely real.
And the relationship layer. Your boss has to work with you tomorrow, and next week, and next quarter. A disagreement that damages the relationship damages everything that comes after it.
So professional disagreement in English, done well, is simultaneously making your point, protecting the status of the person you're disagreeing with, and preserving the relationship.
Which is why I disagree. 2 words, technically accurate, fails so consistently.
It addresses the content, it ignores status, it ignores relationship. And in a professional context, ignoring 2 of the 3 layers is a significant strategic error.
Today, we fix that with language that addresses all 3 layers at once. The single most important concept in professional disagreement in English is what linguists call the linguistic buffer. A buffer is a phrase that comes before your actual point, one that softens the delivery, acknowledges the relationship, and makes what follows easier to hear.
Think of it as the packaging around a difficult gift. The gift, your disagreement, is the same. The packaging determines whether it gets opened or returned immediately.
Without buffer, that approach won't work. Blunt, direct challenge. Relationship friction, immediate.
With buffer, I can see the thinking behind that approach, and I want to make sure we've considered all the angles before we commit. Same disagreement, completely different reception.
The buffer does several things simultaneously. It acknowledges the other person's perspective. I can see the thinking. It positions you as collaborative rather than oppositional. I want to make sure we've considered. And it delays the challenge just long enough for the status and relationship layers to feel respected.
The buffer buys your content the goodwill it needs to be actually heard.
The most powerful professional buffers in English fall into 3 categories: acknowledgement buffers, alignment buffers, and question buffers.
Acknowledgement buffer. You validate before you challenge. That's a really interesting direction, and I want to build on that by raising one concern.
Alignment buffer. You position yourself on the same side before showing the divergence. I'm completely committed to making this project succeed, which is exactly why I want to flag something I think we need to think through.
Question buffer. You use a question to introduce the disagreement rather than a statement. Could I ask, how are we thinking about the timeline on this? I want to make sure I understand the full picture before we finalize.
The question buffer is the most sophisticated because it makes the other person arrive at the problem through their own thinking, rather than having it delivered as a challenge.
They realize the issue themselves, which means they're far more likely to address it.
Let's talk about the specific vocabulary upgrades that transform how you sound in professional disagreement situations. These are the phrases that distinguish someone with basic professional English from someone operating at a high level.
First upgrade, replacing I disagree. The amateur phrase, direct, blunt, creates immediate friction.
Professional replacements at increasing levels of sophistication.
Level 1, I have some concerns about. Slightly softer, still direct, but adds nuance through the word concerns.
Level 2, I have some reservations about the current direction. Reservations is significantly more professional than concerns. It implies considered judgment rather than emotional reaction.
Level 3, I have some reservations regarding the current trajectory. Regarding instead of about, more formal. Trajectory instead of direction implies you're thinking about where this is going over time, not just the immediate decision.
That phrase, I have some reservations regarding the current trajectory, is the kind of language that makes people in a boardroom sit up slightly.
Second upgrade, replacing you're wrong. Impossible in professional English. Genuinely never acceptable in any form.
Professional replacements. I wonder if we might be missing something here. I want to make sure we've stress-tested this assumption. There's a dimension of this I think we might want to explore further.
Notice none of these say the other person is wrong. They say the thinking might need development. The difference is everything.
Third upgrade, replacing I don't think that will work.
I want to make sure we've pressure tested this before we commit. I'm curious how we're accounting for X in this model. I'd love to understand how we see this playing out in practice.
Fourth upgrade, replacing but as a transition into disagreement. But is a warning signal. It tells the listener that everything before it is about to be negated.
Professional replacement, and at the same time. This keeps both things true simultaneously rather than making them adversarial.
That's a strong proposal. And at the same time, I want to make sure we've considered the downstream implications for the client relationship with the client relationship.
Not but the client relationship. And at the same time, the client relationship. The logic is additive, not contradictory. The relationship stays intact.
Let's build the complete framework, what we call the diplomatic pivot. 5 steps. Used in sequence, they allow you to disagree clearly, professionally, and effectively at the highest levels of corporate English.
Step 1. Acknowledge. Genuinely recognize something valuable in what the other person has said or proposed.
The strategic logic here is clear, and I can see why this approach is appealing.
Step 2. Align. Position yourself explicitly on the same side as the person you're disagreeing with.
I'm fully invested in making sure we get this right, which is exactly why I want to raise something.
Step 3. Introduce reservations. Use sophisticated reservation language rather than direct disagreement.
I have some reservations regarding the current trajectory, specifically around the timeline assumptions and their downstream impact.
Step 4. Invite exploration. Turn the conversation collaborative rather than adversarial.
I wonder if it might be worth taking 30 minutes to stress test these assumptions before we finalize the approach.
Step 5. Reaffirm commitment. Close by restating your alignment with the goal.
I want this to succeed. These are the questions I think will help us get there.
Together? The strategic logic here is clear, and I can see why this approach is appealing. I'm fully invested in making sure we get this right, which is exactly why I want to raise something. I have some reservations regarding the current trajectory, specifically around the timeline assumptions. I wonder if it might be worth taking 30 minutes to stress test these assumptions before we finalize. I want this to succeed. These are the questions I think will help us get there.
That is disagreement at the highest professional level. Every layer addressed. Status protected, relationship preserved, content delivered clearly.
The diplomatic pivot. 5 steps. Memorize the structure, fill in the specifics for your situation.
Let's see both versions in action. Henry, you're the boss. You've just announced we're launching the new product in 6 weeks. I know 6 weeks is not enough time. The testing phase alone requires 8 weeks minimum.
Ready. I'm the boss. Team, we're going for a 6-week launch. I've committed to the board. Let's make it happen.
I disagree with that timeline. 6 weeks isn't enough. The testing alone takes 8 weeks. This won't work.
Stepping back, every word in that response is technically accurate, and every word landed badly. I disagree. Direct status challenge. Isn't enough. Tells the boss he's made a bad commitment. This won't work. Predicts failure. Positions the speaker as adversarial. The boss is now defending his commitment to the board rather than listening to the concern.
I really appreciate the urgency here, and I understand the commitment you've made to the board. I'm completely on board with an accelerated timeline, and I want to make sure we protect the quality of the launch, which I know matters to everyone in this room. I have some reservations regarding the current trajectory around the testing phase specifically. Our testing protocol requires a minimum of 8 weeks to meet the quality thresholds we've committed to clients. I wonder, could we explore whether a phased launch might allow us to honor the board timeline while ensuring the testing integrity? I want to get us to launch. I just want to make sure we get there in a way that reflects well on the team. Stepping back, notice what happened. Every concern was communicated. The timeline is unrealistic, communicated as reservations about trajectory. The testing requires 8 weeks, communicated as quality thresholds we've committed to clients. The solution, a phased launch, offered as a question rather than a demand. The boss's commitment to the board is acknowledged and protected. The relationship is preserved. And critically, a genuine solution is on the table. That's the difference between amateur and professional disagreement in English. The amateur delivers the truth badly. The professional delivers the truth in a way it can actually be heard and acted on. Let's take today's most important vocabulary into the word tour.
Our first phrase is reservations regarding. Reservations regarding. Reservations regarding. Reservations regarding. It is the professional replacement for I disagree or I have concerns. It implies considered judgment and positions the speaker as thoughtful rather than reactive. You could say, I have some reservations regarding the current trajectory of this initiative. Or, before we finalize, I want to share some reservations regarding the proposed timeline.
Our next phrase is stress test. Stress test. Stress test. To stress test an idea or assumption means to rigorously examine it under challenging conditions to see if it holds. You could say, I think it's worth taking time to stress test these assumptions before we commit. Or, a strong proposal should be able to withstand stress testing. I'd like to suggest we do that now.
Our next phrase is downstream implications. Downstream implications. Downstream implications. Downstream implications. Downstream implications are the consequences that occur later as a result of a current decision. You could say, I want to make sure we've considered the downstream implications of this approach for our client relationships. Or, the immediate benefits are clear. I'd like us to map the downstream implications before we proceed.
Our next phrase is diplomatic pivot. Diplomatic pivot. Diplomatic pivot. Diplomatic pivot. A diplomatic pivot is a professional technique for redirecting a conversation away from confrontation toward collaborative exploration. You could say, rather than a direct rejection, I want to offer a diplomatic pivot to a phased approach. Or, the most effective professionals use diplomatic pivots to influence decisions without creating friction.
Our last phrase is trajectory. 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 Trajectory refers to the path or direction something is moving over time, particularly its future course. You could say, I have reservations about the current trajectory of this project. Or, we need to discuss whether the current trajectory aligns with our long-term strategic goals.
5 phrases: reservations regarding, stress test, downstream implications, diplomatic pivot, and trajectory. 5 phrases that immediately elevate your professional English to boardroom level. Now it's time to use your English right here. This is Speak with Lily. Say your lines out loud, in your most professional voice.
Think of a real situation where you needed to push back on a decision at work. What was the decision, and why did you have reservations?
Good. Now build your acknowledgement buffer. What is genuinely valid or understandable about the decision that was made?
Now, state your reservations using professional vocabulary. Replace any instinct to say, I disagree, or that's wrong, with a sophisticated reservation phrase.
Now add the question that invites exploration. How would you open the conversation collaboratively, rather than adversarially?
And close with your commitment reaffirmation. How do you make clear that your reservation comes from investment in success, not opposition?
That is a complete diplomatic pivot. Professional, clear, powerful.
Thank you for doing that difficult work today. This skill will serve you in every professional conversation you have in English. So, dear learner and professional, your perspective matters. Your concerns are valid. Your reservations deserve to be heard.
But they will only be heard if they are delivered in a way that the person across the table can actually receive. And that requires skill, linguistic skill, strategic skill, professional skill.
Acknowledge, align, reserve, explore, reaffirm. The diplomatic pivot.
Use it, practice it, and the next time you're in a room where a decision is going wrong, you will know exactly what to say and exactly how to say it.
Take care of your English.
And take care of your professional voice. It is one of the most powerful things you have.
This is Henry.
This is Lily.
And you've been listening to Daily English Lab.
Bye for now.